He said, you know, the real innovation with Web3 is like not even the tech. It's literally how we manage communities. And Jackie, the fun part about that statement is I run with several marketers in my area. And I was talking to one of them today, and I said, we will see. I think we lost Jarrett. Did he freeze?
No, yeah, he's freezing, but
Okay.
that's just
He
Jarrett
literally
and the
froze in
phone
the
time.
best look ever.
I
Look at
know.
this. Jarrett, if you're there, someone private chat him and let him know he's frozen. But we said, I think, he said his computer just died. The small business internal social media manager, their title will change to community manager.
Yep.
And I think that is a direct result of the learning of marketers who have dabbled and seen what's been going on with kind of what crypto's been doing in the community. And then there he is. Welcome back. You frozen the best thumbnail ever, bro.
We were laughing profusely.
We definitely should have just screenshotted that and made that our thumbnail for today's show.
My computer literally has never done that before. It just went black, and then the little white Mac, like the little white Apple, popped up, and I was like, perfect timing. Literally as you were going live.
Time for a PC, bro. Just saying. So everyone rolls their eyes.
Wait, this is good. Do you have an iPhone, Jackie? I know we're gonna get like really personal.
I'm all Apple products. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're now here, because when I'm with the other two, it's just green text for days.
Green bubbles, get out of my life.
Well, I don't even know what this means. Is this an elitist thing?
They're totally being elitist. Grant, it's a good thing we're on top, because
Mac versus PCs. All right, everybody. It is the Not Crypto Bros, and we are supremely delighted to have Jackie Roach here. Wellness and so many other things. We could talk about her MBAs and her certifications, but we'll get into that later, I'm sure. Guys, listen. Like, we were all permissionless last week, and I think we've talked about this so much. I don't know how much more we actually want to talk to each other about this, but we can, because Jackie wasn't there, and maybe Jackie has questions. But a lot happened while we were gone last week, right? Did anything happen, or did the world freeze? Like,
oh, tons of things happened. I mean, I think to think everything froze while permissionless and token 2049 were going on, it would not happen. George, we know that you hacked his computer. It's just it's a given.
That's the first thing I thought too, Aussie. He was like, ha ha, ha beep.
Exactly. He knew what time we were going live. He needed to mess with you.
Well, let's do this real quick. If Jackie, you have any specific questions about permissionless, or could we do like a TLDR?
You could do a TLDR. I do have something to say, because I've talked to you guys since you've been back as well. I do have like there's been a lot in the news. We were like, before coming on the show, we were talking about like tons of things between, Base and Solana and the Visa program, like all these different things that have like lots of like nuggets are happening right now. But I do have like, based on something you told me about permissionless, Grant, I do have like a wrap up, like final bit of advice for everybody in Web3 right now for what is coming from me. But I do have some.
Like wrap up at the end of the show, or a wrap up for permissionless?
I think of like an overall state of the industry right now. I listen to a lot of different I mean, you guys know I'm on like the institutional side a little bit more than anything else. So I think there's some good prep work that people could be doing going into Q4. And I think this is an opportune time to tell people that. We're mid-September right now. So I think getting your house in order, your ducks in a row these next 2 weeks is really important for the upcoming quarter.
I like that. Okay,
that's huge. That's a huge point, because I definitely think that there is a lot that we can take heading into this year, or to the end of this year, Q4, but looking into the next year and the Bitcoin halving, in terms of not only for just our regular investors, your regular degens, aka George, but also your institutional partners and those businesses that are just starting to explore Web3.
Interesting. Well, so then, since we're on the topic of institutions for the moment, I was really intrigued. Did any of you actually look at that white paper that Visa put out? Jackie alluded to it in our chat. about going to Solana, and it was the best. Like, I was pretty convinced of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't dump all my Solana. Like, maybe I should stack. Like, what'd you guys think of that article? Like, I thought it was a well done article. And there was a few things that I saw that I'm like, that's right. Institutions do care about. I made a few notes here. Achieving cost predictability. I had never thought about how corporations and institutions really like to predict. And it's like, you're right. There is no predicting on Ethereum. There's no predicting on maybe Lightning will help Bitcoin become quite a bit more predictable, but still, it like compared to Solana, it's like always the same price. So, like, did you guys read that article? I have a link that I can put. I'm going to drop it on LinkedIn real quick. But any takes on this? Because I thought this was serious.
I'm going to dive on that predictability thing because some of this work that I do currently is all around forecasting and predictions, basically for costs and market forecasts in the future. And I'm intrigued by the comment that you made about Ethereum and Bitcoin being more predictable than Solana. And I would argue Solana being more predictable than Ethereum and Bitcoin. I would almost argue about whether that's just, if that's a feature or if that's a bug. So you love using that saying, Grant, but what if it's a bug on Solana in terms of the fact that there's no volume and everyone else is not using Solana, and that's what's creating the predictability. The demand on Ethereum and Bitcoin are definitely driving those fees. But if Solana all of a sudden has another NFT boom like in the last bull market, does that take away that predictability for Visa?
Like, it's in a slump, it's in a down market. Well, I mean, I think that there was major history searched on relative price adjustment. So, like, I think they even went to peak throughput hours. And we have a friend of the family.
Jackie comes on like Dr. Evil with Mr. Bigglesworth, just stroking an animal, getting ready to take over the world. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
He was wigging out downstairs. I was like, I have to go rescue my dog. I'm so sorry.
That is true. That is true institutional vibes, Jackie. You just come back on with a little lap dog.
We need to buy Jackie a VC vest. And then she has the VC vest on. It's just like a Patagonia puff vest and like Higglesworth here. And
his name is Walter.
Walter.
Okay,
better,
this
Walter.
is even more VC.
Yeah, calling your dog Walter is peak VC.
Walter Bison Roach.
Walter Bison Roach.
Yes, he would be European, old European money. But Aussie, I think your point's a really interesting one, and I wonder. So I wasn't able to read that article, Grant. I'm glad you were able to and give us like some notes on it. Yep. But I wonder if the predictability around cost comes down to fees, because that is something that may be more predictable than the price, for example, which I think is what Aussie may be talking about. Like, if all this money comes into the network, then obviously you're going to see how the network scales, right? And if it can't or not. And I do know, going back to Domingo, who I'm pretty sure we all met at NFTYC with Homebase DAO, when he came on More Than Blockchain, we had talked about that. I said, why would you not just use Ethereum? That seems to me like the degen play. That's the wallet most people have. Most people have a MetaMask, right? And I feel like MetaMask is eventually going to add Solana if they do well.
They announced exactly that.
That's what I thought. I think that's part of their roadmap to roll out.
It's on permissionless. It was part of their roadmap of permissionless with snaps.
Okay.
So.
Because I remember that Domingo is saying they wanted to go similar things as they, forecast into the future. They have to know that when they do, if someone's going to buy $100 worth of their tokenized real estate, they need that transaction to be 20 cents. Not like, let's see if like Yuga Labs dropped a new thing on land that's going to be $5,000 for $100 NFT mint, right? So that was more for me. It was around the cost effectiveness and the cost predictability of the fee structure, not
fees.
so much of the overall, because Solana could go where it is now. I think it's probably 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It could go back up to 220 where it was at its all-time high. Ethereum, I think we'll probably see at 10K in the next bull run fairly easily if it topped out at 4,400 this last one. So I think it's more about the fee structure. And in that does make sense, because I also think that when this is the huge thing, and this probably ties back to what Jackie's going to talk about institutions. This is the huge divergence that I felt at permissionless. I think many of us did, was there was a difference between, and we've talked about this a lot, so I don't want to beat a dead horse. There's a difference between having cool degen stuff and then something that's a viable business, right? In degen stuff, we maybe don't care. Oh, dude, the vibes, who cares? Pay $30 for a mint on a $50 NFT. It's like, no, if I'm going to an investor, I need to show them 4 quarters, even 8 quarters out, this is how this is probably going to scale.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's kind of the divergence between children and adults.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. So this is important. They, at least in terms of their average transaction fee, their data is only going back to October of 2022. So
Solana?
On Solana and all of them. So you're talking only bear market. Like at that point, even like Solana NFTs were already pretty dead by that point. They might have only recently reached their 2-year low in terms of daily active users, but they were already deep in the bear market. So when they come and pull this data showing, oh, there was a big like up in fees in Ethereum and Bitcoin in USD value back in April, May, when we had the kind of weird NFT and ordinals boom, mini bull market kind of thing. There was, Solana no one was paying attention to Solana, so Solana didn't have that fee bump. And so I would wonder if you were to take Solana in, peak bull market, what that chart really looks like. And as that demand on Solana increases, does it have that same kind of boost in USD fees that we might see on Ethereum or Bitcoin?
But if I may on this, and Jackie, you've been asking a lot because of your institution background. You felt a little rusty in like DeFi and some of the nuances here. This was a nuance that you may or may not remember. And gentlemen, remind me if you remember this. Back in the OG, when I was holding Polygon, there was a moment to bridge that into Ethereum. And I had about $500 on this single transaction that I was bridging from Polygon to Ethereum. At the time, I couldn't tell if it was a Polygon mess or an Ethereum mess, but the transactions sharded, for lack of a better term. I know we don't have technically sharding, but that's kind of what they did. They broke the transaction in two and to fit on blocks in a certain order. And I was charged double fees than if I had a single transaction go through.
Sounds like a bad bridge.
It could easily have been a bad bridge, but Solana is here's our trigger. What if we had Corpo speak for crypto? This is one baked in to Solana. Baked into Solana is parallel transactions where you're still getting this scale predictability of cost. And so I think you're right, Jared. I think that not only you're right, Aussie. Like data only goes back so far, but also. What was that? What are you sharing there? Oh, please reshare. Got it. But I think baked into Solana is if you're quoted a price, you won't see these sudden wonky interoperability bugs or snags where suddenly your transaction fees balloon, even if it's a mistake in the software. In Solana, I think the parallel processing actually is set up. And that's getting a little bit into nerd speak. But when I was reading this article and I saw the intensity with which they had tested Ethereum and Bitcoin Lightning and realized Bitcoin's off the table at 7 transactions per second. Lightning is going to start helping things, but it's going to start, which means it's not predictable now. And then they went to Ethereum, obviously, and they were seeing a lot of these little buggy bugs at scale, I think, Jared, like at the scale they're trying for what they're assuming is going to happen in the coming years. So I was surprised on the Solana end myself that, oh, wow, there's some nuances that I've been disregarding because the whole freaking thing goes down. So
Yeah, to me, I would probably prefer to use an Avalanche subnet, maybe even a private Avalanche subnet that Ava Labs was talking about. A lot of institutions adopting right now, or at least dabbling and testing on right now, rather than Solana, because of the EVM interoperability, the fact that Avalanche doesn't just go down whenever whenever it wants, and because you can set up a subnet, you can fix your fees, and therefore you can make it a lot more manageable. So Solana is a weird play to me.
They might have never heard of Avalanche, unfortunately.
It's on their list. They just don't show the fees.
Oh, was it? I didn't get that far. Me, I don't know about y'all, but I know that I'm a little like Wonderland time. So I think Avalanche, and I'm like Wonderland time.
Yeah, that's some real PTSD. Thanks, Grant. Well, the other thing I want to say about not choosing Bitcoin Lightning is that, I mean, I guess there are like Strike is out there, the Jack Mallers company. But when people don't choose Bitcoin for a reason, I'm always like, okay, that's fine. Because there's no CEO that's going to sit down in a boardroom and sweet talk them. There's no steak dinner. Solana went in there and gave, they were doing back massages while they were talking for sure.
They had the VC vest and Walter. And
yeah, they had Walter. They were stroking Walter, and they had the VC vest in 80-degree heat. And they were like, you must come with us. We are the Sith Lords of crypto. Because
we go to Davos. Why don't you come and hang with us?
It's Davos.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't think it is. So Solana is interesting, and Raoul Pal always talks about Solana because in the last bull run in 2021, Raoul Pal was like, he was talking about why he was investing in Ethereum, and he was like, if you look at the Ethereum chart setting up as it was setting up into maybe 2020 to 2021. He was like, this looks like the same chart that Bitcoin had before 2017. And he literally put them over one another. And you would see Bitcoin in 2017 bull run almost matched Ethereum's rise in 2021. And so he had like, $20,000 for Ethereum. He still gets in trouble on Twitter for this. But he said, what's crazy is that if we look at what Ethereum did, because I had my buddy Eddie, I don't know if he's watching. I had my buddy Eddie buy one Ethereum for $100 off Robinhood in 2019. And when it hit 4,500, he literally thought I was the second coming of Christ because it went 45x. And I was like, I promise you it's not. Timing is half the game. But what Raoul Pal has said is that what he thinks in this next run, Solana is setting up the way Ethereum set up for the last bull run. And he thinks that he said, and other people have said that maybe Solana goes up to 1,000. Which is about 50x from where it is today. Now, 50x in a bull run for a token or a cryptocurrency isn't like life-changing, but it is when it's this high up. Normally, they're not this high up and they go 50x. So anyways, Solana's one where you really want to do your homework, because if you're trying to become, a millionaire overnight, that could be a really interesting play. So This is definitely not financial advice. The financial advice is to do your, to Dior. The luxury brand of crypto. Research. Do your own research.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talks at Permissionless about Solana and whether Solana is dead or not. And so this is pretty interesting. I didn't actually go to any of those, and I'm kind of regretting it but I did talk to a couple of different people, including one of the members of the DGods community of influencers, TJ. And TJ was talking about how there's a lot going on in Solana, and you just there's games on Solana that just don't get counted in the daily transactions and all of that. And he was like, if you're looking for a low risk play, Solana might be worth it as a kind of secondary bag outside of your ETH and Bitcoin. But Brian Naughton, you're making an interesting point. Yeah. Time to finality is a very, very big picture for Visa, and I mean for any major company. And I think the time to finality is going to have to come down dramatically on L2s. And it might be part of the whole L2 Cambrian explosion that was discussed at Permissionless.
Wait. Could you, for the plebes in the room who don't know what you're talking about, What is the L2 Cambrian explosion?
Yeah, that was a lot of jargon, Aussie. Why don't you take 20 minutes and unpack it?
Well, not 20.
Oh, I'm not taking 20 minutes. But
Look,
Cambrian
it
explosion-
was so heavy, Aussie. Jackie left.
Yeah, I know. I terrified her. I know. I break people. But Cambrian explosion is essentially a period in history where the number of species on Earth exploded.
Yeah.
Like it increased 10, 100, 1,000 fold.
Okay.
And so essentially what they're saying is that the number of L2s is probably going to go, like right now we've probably got 5 to 10 L2s on Ethereum max, where maybe we'll probably see a million different L2s in the future.
Jackie, you know what? I have a question for you with your institutional kind of background. I know that you get floated a lot of projects, and a lot of them are really nuanced. Are these projects informed enough to even be speculating what blockchain they're trying to come up with their supply chain solutions with? Like, is that something that they come to the table kind of having a suspicion about?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, sometimes it depends on like what stage a project's in. In the early days, like the ICO boom, you know, I was just thinking about this earlier today. There was a lot of people, like older people that were wealthy, that were getting pitched like all these ICO projects. You know, they wanted people wanted to like, and unfortunately, a lot of those people didn't have the technical knowledge to know whether this was a good investment or not. And I think we're going to see, also, I agree with you. I think the L2 explosion is upon us. It is coming. But I also think that's why, Base is doing what it's doing. And we can definitely like switch over to this conversation if you guys want. But I think everybody knows to like build on Ethereum right now. And actually, I think that's why this Visa Solana is so interesting to me, just to like kind of go back a second. Because I think encouraging competition among some of these like top 5 blockchains right now, which Solana is in there, you know, definitely more people know of Solana than Avalanche. I think this is good for the entire ecosystem, like the industrial applications of blockchain, because I think we will start to see certain blockchains do certain things and are concentrating in certain areas. Solana was always positioning itself to be hyper fast transaction speeds and super cheap. I mean, I think in Solana's original white paper, which I read a while ago, like they were literally talking about backwards time, like inside the white paper. Like their protocol is called proof of history.
What?
Yeah, it's proof of history, and it literally like deals with 4-dimensional time. It's wild. Which on one show I told you guys they were a little too smart for like, you know, normal everyday people. Their founders play like 5D hockey. It's like in a pool, but you play hockey. It's got like another layer of dimensionality in it. Like these people are cray.
That's another layer.
Visa is going to humble their ass a little bit. I'll put it that way. So, and it's good. It's good for these blockchains to be, to be the institutional person in the room to say like, great, you guys are already in, 80, 30, 50, but we all live in 2023. So how can people use this right now? Thank you.
So go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was going to say. And this is like coming back to sometimes when people pitch you things and you're like, great, I can use a Google Sheet and an API. I don't actually need blockchain. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, and first of all, I don't know if you just sold Solana for people or you just like buried it underneath like, the jail because
Dior. I always say DYOR. I just
Dior.
Dior. So do your own research.
This is the trifecta conundrum with blockchain. You can have 2 of these, but you really can't have all 3. And if you do, then obviously you're positioned in the middle. So, and I know that I feel like a boomer holding a picture up to a live, but like Solana.
The picture's backwards too, Jared. So
yeah, Jared, it's back. I can't even read it, you boomer.
Okay, well, anyways, you guys are smart enough. It's scalability, security, and decentralization.
Yes.
Solana has no decentralization. In my head, it is like 5 servers in the back of a warehouse in like Wyoming.
Yeah.
No, it's in an AWS warehouse in Wyoming.
Exactly my point. So it's like, for me, I know that Solana is super quick, but like when that network goes down, it's because the stoner intern they have just forgets to flip the switch. Maybe. It's like watching an episode of Lost, like they don't hit the button every hour and a half. I don't know if anyone gets that.
I got that reference.
Okay, but I want to go back to Brian Naughton's comment because I just want to say it out loud because
sure,
for
please.
people that are listening on Spotify, he said, I think layer 2s on ETH are out of the picture for Visa because of time to finality. Aussie touched on this, which can be up to 7 days on some of the existing rollups. And now I guess my thing for you guys is like, if you're okay, how are their VCs wearing their vests, stroking their Mr. Bigglesworth cats that are going to invest in one of the billion L2s that are going to come out? You know, if I'm like, I just don't even know where that money is going to come from. Is it just straight vibes? Are they going to be like Pepe coin vibes where it's like a team of two? Jack, you're shaking your head. How does this happen? Like, where does the money come to support all these projects?
Honestly, I think this is where the ETFs are going to just explode this whole scene in the next bull run. This is kind of what I was talking about in the beginning of this episode. I think we now have enough people, enough adults in the room, we'll say lovingly, that can actually inform these baskets of assets, in crypto assets to actually get exposure in, more safe and secure ways. It's not a degen's playground any longer, I don't think. And I think this bull run will be the last opportunity for the degens to really get what they're getting. And I get that's the other side of my advice on this is like, if you've been playing the game for a while, this is probably your last big.
I think this.
run.
I
agree.
I agree. I think that we'll see swaps, like the people like us and degens or like boomer degens, meaning people that were degens, but they're now drinking TradFi Kool-Aid just because. Those of us who know how to go onto a those of us who know how to go to a swap and hear about some altcoin, some shit coin, something like this, we will always still be, or Curve or any of these, we will always still be able to make money, but I think those margins will get dramatically narrower. I think the next bull run is the last run for people like us to leverage our insider knowledge for big gains.
So I've got an interesting counterpoint because Japan has just announced that you can do raises, like corporate raises, using crypto now. It's the first country.
Counterpoint though, like tie that together for me.
I'm going to tie that together by saying we could see more companies that require accredited investors for like ICOs to actually just move to crypto, because if we see what's happening with Japan, and Japan's been traditionally very behind the digital asset curve.
Yeah.
So I generally agree with, I think the leverage gains and the degenhood is going to disappear a lot, but I don't necessarily think that our ability to get those large margins are going to disappear, because I think that our ability to get those margins will come actually from legitimate companies ICOing in crypto rather than degen project experiments.
So it'll be a layer. So follow me with this metaphor. There was a show for a while on HBO about the early hackers of like the 80s, and it followed this cohort like right up through like the Google era. And this one guy was kind of like a Steve Jobs. Very interesting. I can't even think of the name of it, but it was awesome. And it had a good, it pictured or visualized the hacker culture of the 80s and how they really made the internet. But then when big companies came along, like literally they all kind of burnt out and disappeared. They just became devs within these companies. I believe what we're calling degens is almost like a finance hacker. And it's like the hacker culture of the 80s. And we've been literally the Wild West of the 80s, but in DeFi. And they've been finding curve hacks in the curve wars and leveraging the strong nodes and like, basically, they're hackers of money. But what you're right about, Aussie, is there is this layer of insider datum that will probably be ever present. I think it'll be muted, meaning the volume of that noise will have to be really plugged into crypto Twitter still. You have to really be plugged in to what's going on at those institutions. But those institutions might even use this layer as institutions today use white hat and black hat hackers to vet stuff before it goes live. You might see these institutions use degens to test the tokenomics and the cryptonomics of their ICOs long before, and their contracts, they're smart contracts, long before that's ready. It's probably going to be part of the process. So I think you're right. And that stuff always leaks to the rest of us who are lurking, going, give us some alpha, man. Like,
Well,
give
so
us some
like I
alpha.
definitely think that there's that capability, and Vivek Ramaswamy says he wants to get rid of accredited investor definition in the U.S. He's one of the presidential candidates.
Oh,
and
this guy, yeah.
And this kind of move by Japan is essentially eliminating that prejudice of accredited investors. And
Interesting.
so could that be what happens with crypto? Crypto basically has been eliminating the definition of accredited investors. And by allowing ICOs on the blockchain, are we essentially going to make that happen? Especially if we see more countries outside of Japan adopt it. And Japan has been considerably more conservative than most countries up to this point.
Aussie, I think that's an amazing idea. If you want to sell crypto to somebody, like you're just walking around, you're like, hey, why should I invest in crypto? And then you just explain to them what's the word?
Precambrian
No.
Gibraltar?
The what's it? Legitimate investor. You just said it.
Accredited investor.
Thank you, an accredited investor. When I found out about what that was, I felt like I'd been lied to. I felt like there was a game that was being played that I just never could have access to because I didn't have the qualifications. It is like it is the real DAO or NFT of the wealthy. It's like, oh, you can't come in unless you have these things, and it allows people to be able to get access to gains, and it keeps the rich, and it doesn't allow other people to kind of ascend the, financial ladder. So I think maybe that's a great way to sell crypto. Be like, oh yeah, you can get, and that's what actually how I sold Bitcoin the other day to somebody. I was like, well, actually Bitcoin is still pre-institution. Yes, there are institutions there, but like we haven't had the ETF. Once the ETF comes out, and I think Jackie alluded to this earlier, she's like, that's where all the liquidity comes from for all this other stuff for, for us to have a million L2s. But what I will say is, I don't know if that's good for crypto, because one of the things I would love to avoid for crypto, and I know it's impossible because we're in a space of trying new things and trying to move forward without breaking stuff, a la Mark Zuckerberg. But like, if Solana doesn't work out for Visa, that's not going to be good, right? If you have a million L2s and they get money from well-known VCs and then they don't work out, you're going to hear about that on CNN. And we only ever hear about the bad things that happen in crypto. Rarely do we hear about the good things. There's such good news all the time for Bitcoin specifically. If I'm going to look at something specifically, you never hear about it. Ever. When I say you never, I mean like the mainstream media. If you watch CNN or Fox News, which are the two biggest news networks, maybe MSNBC that dominate.
Blankless went on, literally was questioning the room on this during one of their last talks about the creator economy and news in the crypto space. So I totally agree that we never hear about it, but I'm gonna disagree with your point that a million L2s is going, like, getting VC money and not all of them working out is going to create bad news for crypto, because I don't think that's the case, and it partly has to do with how these L2s are going to come about.
Jackie, with your prediction, like you were going to do kind of a wrap on institution transition, did it touch on this explosion of L2s at all? Like, what are we watching for? Or did it only touch really on liquidity and this being the last hurrah? What was the main, was it this?
It's funny, like actually it was even bigger than like crypto and all of this, and it didn't have to do with explosions at all, but actually the exact opposite. So you guys came back from permissionless, you met lots of people, you had lots of contacts. So it's safe to say that like your time at the conference, there was a lot of like inputs, there was a lot of like energy coming at you, there was a lot of, and then what did all of you do after permissionless? You had to like defrag for a moment. You had to like decompress. You had to like let that information. And I actually think that's what the really smart people in Q4 will be doing right now, is actually playing a bit more of a passive role, because the bull, I don't believe the bull is going to come this year. I don't think it's going to come in Q4. And again, this is women's intuition. It's anything but financial advice. But I think, we all need to understand this landscape and like actually get the fragmented players out of the way. Like that's what defragging is. Like a computer, when it's defragging, it's getting all those fragments out. And the reason it's doing that is to actually conglomerate the free space so that the free space can actually start working. I'm getting like way too technical out there right
No,
now.
no. I like
But I
this.
think like right now there's like crypto is so crowded. I mean, what, there's 26,000 tokens out there. I mean, right now I think we need like a complete, and I think that this bear is doing that. So I think like that's happening. And I think the L2s that are going to be coming out, if they're smart, they're thinking about interoperability. They're thinking, and even in the Solana case with Visa, you know, I think Circle is playing a bigger part than even Solana. Circle's the one that's settling the USDC stablecoin. So, I mean, it's not just the blockchain, right? It's who are they partnering with, and even just go back to like when I was like vetting, you know, not telling people to put their investments somewhere because it was never financial advice, but I mean, when I would vet those ICOs, it was who is the team, who is their network, who are they, like what is their future of interoperability? And I think that's how I think people need to get a game plan of how they're even going to approach vetting things before they can just start playing.
I've been thinking about this, Aussie, real quick, and I'll hand you the mic.
No, go.
No, I was just thinking like there needs to be a crypto screener, but like literally it screens based on these flags. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and we could probably use AI to like go to the Avalanche website or go to that L2's website and look at the about page and say doxed or not doxed. Is it an avatar handle? And AI could say, well, the name is Wigglesworth. What's the percentage chance that that's a real name or that's an avatar, you know? And so I do agree with you. And I actually tried to do this in the early days, but it was so squirrely and we didn't have the tech to do it, but I believe we do have the tech. Aussie, what was your thought? I cut you off.
No, I think we definitely need screeners, and I definitely think everyone needs to nail down their strategy coming into this this bull market. My strategy, and I mean, Jarrett and I were just having a conversation about whether to put a little bit of risk on Bitcoin miners right now. Bitcoin miners tend to appreciate pretty significantly at the same time as the Bitcoin price jumps as people try to acquire more miners. And so they're at a pretty heavy low right now. And so there's potentially worthwhile risk of acquiring, you know, the picks and axes of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining right now, heading into this next bull market. If you got the liquidity, I've been thinking about that, and I've been looking at, you know, how do we build a little bit of extra liquidity to just be able to keep running and getting into some of these different projects. I definitely have a few in mind that are kind of more leveraged 100x, 1000x plays that are maybe a bit degen, but I mean,
maybe, just maybe.
Well, they've got low market caps. They're like one project that I'm looking at a $6 million market cap, but what they're building is something that I think is massive and could easily 1000x if they're the ones that do it properly and succeed. And so it's one of those things of taking different aspects and looking at different opportunities and seeing, okay, where can I go and how do I approach this?
I'd love to piggyback on this real quick, Aussie, because you're highlighting something so important, especially with the picks and axes route. There's so much more than just crypto building all of this stuff. We all know that. And just for an example, since I'm on Crypto Bros, Netflix has a show called Glow Up, and it's for makeup artists. and on like, I'm in the 5th season or whatever it is. And I was watching it the other night, and they were having makeup artists design makeup for Decentraland. They were in Decentraland on this program. So, I mean, talking about avatar fashion, you know, this is like the commercialization of this is coming quick. And I don't think and I know people are not connecting all the dots between AR, VR, XR, AI, crypto, but really it is the tokenization of assets. And so beyond like how institutions and financial and crypto, but beyond money, it is how does this infrastructure and system move and work? And that's what I would tell people to really try to start to understand right now.
You know, that would make a great like what is that software, Note.io or whatever it's called that people put up? No, not knowledge. There's this there's this note that you can create. It's kind of like you create your custom wiki, but you can publish it and sell it. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but like that would be great. Like the top 50 jobs within the metaverse that have nothing to do with a crypto token other than just pay. You know, like revisiting even like what were we doing in Second Life? There were cabbies. There were people who were cab drivers in Second Life. You know, it's like Dwight Schrute.
One of the tokens I did the best, I don't know what I actually X'd on it, but was Mana. And I knew Paris Hilton was doing a DJ set in Decentraland, and I killed it. I just invested a few days before, and I mean, it was crazy. So, and I think people discount Decentraland a lot too. It's
Yes.
Mana is one of my favorite tokens. I've definitely played that token really well over the years.
That's it. So I want to tie into this infrastructure plays. I'm not looking I'm looking at someone who we talked about flat coins a whole bunch. Your bet is building the infrastructure for anyone to build it, betting on the thing that's building the infrastructure to build any flat coin rather than building any flat coin, not buying just any flat coin. Building the infrastructure to build that are going to go further. And this is going to be my only token that I'm actually going to name drop right now because we've been talking about layer 2s, but Optimism.
Interesting.
So their CEO gave an amazing talk at Permissionless. He gave several talks, and
Really?
he was super, super interesting.
Why didn't you pull me into any of these sessions?
Because you literally wouldn't listen to me.
Because you can't sit still.
You're a child. You're like a 5-year-old.
Grant sits in the front with a Chinese finger trap, and he's just like, ugh.
I met a lot of great people, but no, I didn't even realize the President Optimism is there.
Oh,
and
the CEO of Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync, all of them were there. And the reason why I'm most bullish on OP, and why OP is going to be an important part of my portfolio coming forward, is they've got the Optimism stack.
Yes.
And Base is built on it. There's other blockchains, L2s that are being built on it. All of those, Optimism is best placed right now to be the center of the Cambrian explosion for L2s.
So check this out. I want to bridge this conversation a little bit, just a shade. You're talking about a stack, picks and axes, and one of you brought up, was it Citi building
Citibank? Yeah.
Citibank. Did you guys look into that?
Yeah, they're tokenizing assets. They're using it for cross-border payments. It's their own private blockchain, but.
So what I found here, and I think it is that same, actually, it's not that link. It is called the RLN, the Regulated Liability Network, vetted by the Federal Reserve of New York. And it is its own layer 0 for regulated, digitized assets of sovereign currencies, nation state currencies. And I believe that if Citi is running on this suddenly shakes my foundation a little bit, believing that Ripple or the 20022 tokens are actually going to be the rails. I was reading. Go ahead, Jarrett, please.
Yeah, I just want to hop in. Well, I want you to continue that thought. Sorry, I was just like, my knee-jerk reaction was, this is private. This is private, though. This is so that way you can move your money around the world in the Citi network. The 2022, from what I understand, and also after Hedera was literally at the White House, that's more sovereign. That's more like going to replace the SWIFT program, probably.
The regulated liability is to literally mirror the current known banking system and its backdoors for governance purposes. So it is private in so much as your bank account is currently private, but it's built in. Since it's regulated, they got to comply with the Patriot Act. They got to be, but now they're doing it a single click. And I think there are elements of FedNow that run on it. And so, go ahead, Aussie, please.
It is, and AVAX was talking. Avalabs was talking about how it's how it's going to start. But the problem that Citigroup's going to run into is when JP Morgan, Fidelity, all of these other banks start moving onto the blockchain once we've got the regulatory clarity, because a lot of them are itching at that bit to get onto the blockchain. They've been apparently Evil Labs have been having a lot of these discussions. City's
And-
gonna have to migrate all of their services. They're actually
Interesting.
pigeonholing themselves because JP Morgan's not gonna want to use Citigroup's blockchain.
That's what
And-
I was thinking too. That's what I was thinking too. You know, when you put up a wall, it goes both ways. You keep people out, but you also keep yourself in. And if Citi wants to play with any of the other big banks, they're going to be in trouble. Whereas if Fed now, when they roll out a CBDC, which probably looks very similar to this, you're going to be able to use that in any one of the banks, at least domestically in the United States, and then any partners that they have abroad. Because obviously, it behooves the United States to keep people on the U.S. dollar, whether that's digital or not. So we'll see. It is a really cool first use case. But just going back to and I'm going to change subject a little bit away from the city so we can come back if people want to play in that. When it comes to investment advice, and this will be my third bull run in crypto. I had a guy on More Than Blockchain, and he goes by G Clef. He's a kid in Massachusetts who sold a bunch of real estate and bought a bunch of Bitcoin at 10K. And he's now got a lot of Bitcoin. And that's why he wants to stay anonymous on the internet. Pseudonymous, I should say. He said to me once, and it really rings true after Wonderland, after my money's locked up in BlockFi because I was chasing 8% APY on stablecoins. He said, chasing shitcoins is the tax to understand Bitcoin maxis.
Ooh.
And so my question for you guys is, if you, and this should be financial advice. I want this to be financial advice. I want you each to give a number. Looking ahead, if somebody comes to you and they say, what should I invest in? You're going to say DYOR on the altcoins, right?
Sure.
But how much of their portfolio, and you can speak from yourselves, hey, if I had $1,000, this is what I put it into. How much your portfolio will be Bitcoin as we go into this new bull run? You know, if you let's just play. If you had $1,000 today and you had to put it in, how much of that would be Bitcoin today? We're pre-ETF. We're still really, really, really depressed prices. How much of that is Bitcoin, and how much of that is looking at optimism, is looking at some of the other ETH killers like Solana, and I'm using big air quotes. Go ahead. I'd love for each of you to share. Jackie, we'll start with you because you
had a facial reaction there.
You got a smile that smells
You're gonna hate my answer.
institutional.
If I had $1,000, no, it's probably the most anti-institutional. If I had $1,000 and I was just getting into crypto, 0 of it would go in Bitcoin. I would do my due diligence. I would invest on lots of little coins and then DCA into Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think if you're starting out and you don't have any, unless you're close, I think you're better off making, it's definitely a game and you got to learn. But I think you're better. I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of people get in Bitcoin and they're just not feeling the return because, putting $100 in or $500 in, it means nothing when Bitcoin's, leading the pack.
I'm gonna
Awesome.
agree with her just for a second. I think $1,000 is probably, and at this, are we talking this specific point in the bear market?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter the money. I just want a percent. Jackie said 0%. So what's your percent? It doesn't matter what we put in. I just want to know what your percent is. But you have to hold through the bull.
Okay, because that's a huge game changer. If we're just talking percentage, I'm talking 45% is Bitcoin, 40% or maybe between 40 and 35% in ETH. Kind of rebalances a little bit depending on some of the alts. As we get closer to where I think the alt bleeding bottom actually is, where we can get into some of those micro caps for some risk play is okay. So then there's probably 10% in OP. And then, so we're talking, I've probably got another 15%, I think, left if my math's right now. There's a percentage split between a couple of other layer 1s or layer 2s that are either ETH killers or ETH scalers. And then there's a small 2.5%, between 2.5% and 5%, depending on what stage of the bear market we are in. That's going to be dedicated to high risk altcoins.
To Pepe. Okay.
Not
Grant,
Pepe. That's
Grant, you're
literally the opposite of financial advice.
I just wanted to clarify too. I didn't know we had to hold this the entire bull. Like, because I was like, Bitcoin's always the goal for me. It's just like allocating that percentage in the beginning. And to just really quickly clarify, again, not financial advice, but GRT, Link, Mana, and OP are like 4 I'm looking at the most.
GRT, Graph? GRT?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Graph. So I want to shout out George's comment, and then Grant, I'm going to throw you the mic.
Yeah.
George says, "New money. Bitcoin is treated as an investment, as is ETH. Everything else falls more in the quote gamble vertical, in my opinion, my honest opinion." Thank you for not lying to us,
Jackie
George.
shakes her head. No, everyone's reacting.
Grant, go ahead. Well, and then we'll come back to Jackie.
I do tend to agree with George Todorolo, and he mentioned this when we were together in Austin last week, and I do tend to agree. Bitcoin more and more will be treated as an asset, not a currency. Therefore, its liquidity will go down. We'll see more liquidity in the liquidity pools from the ETFs, but they're going to start treating it like gold. And so, so my decision won't be based necessarily on Bitcoin as currency or new money, but Bitcoin as gold. And so, literally, it will not change. 15% goes to Bitcoin. This will stay the same for me because I'm DCAing. These are just rough and raw numbers. This is the game plan I was putting to my Patreon people, but I still DCA this every 2 weeks. And Bitcoin, ETH, and Matic all get 15%. I think I got a handful that divvy up 30% at 7.5% each. And this is conservative investments, moderate investments, and high investments. So I do follow a pretty traditional approach to portfolio asset management. But I will say it's very tempting to hear Jackie kind of really raise the flag, as you all have, about the looming tsunami that I think we're still downplaying with ETFs. But, that mantra comes in. What is it? Bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. This idea of you get greedy and you start losing your way. You start thinking with the wrong brain, right? You start losing your mind. So for me, I might go into this and reallocate this a little bit, but that's a long answer. The TLDR,
Grant, I would definitely reallocate that. I looked at that very quickly, and I would reallocate that.
XDCs has to go.
Your allocation to Matic is way too high.
It is now. I will say that I've been holding out, but they really haven't been stepping it up, and so I might replace that with another.
I would split it. So
layer zero.
This is where I would split some of that allocation elsewhere. I would still keep an allocation into Matic, but Matic is in that pool of, I said OP maybe 10% of my portfolio.
Sure.
Matic falls into a basket with Arbitrum, Solana, and I considered Cardano and Cosmos, kind of a smaller pool of those 5, which are essentially, hey, I think that they're still going to do something, and they're kind of like a medium risk play in terms of they'll probably still X. Who knows if they're going to be the killer? I don't think they're going to be the killers, but they're still holding sustainability. So Arbitrum, Matic, Solana, Cosmos, Cardano, they're kind of like a secondary play to play on, like Arbitrum and Matic play on the ETH narrative and the ETH layer 2 narrative. Solana is what happens with Visa and the fact that it's down to like $20 right now. And it was 200 and something or even 300 and something in the last bull market. Even that's a 10x, not even considering it going to 1,000, which would be a 50x.
Definitely not financial advice.
So that's and then we got Cosmos, who had a decent presence at permissionless, which I was surprised about. When I was talking with Trevor, I don't know if you guys got a chance to meet Trevor, but he's actually leading 2 teams building on Cosmos, and he was the community lead for Terra Luna. He was the closest thing to being on the Terra Luna team without being on the Terra Luna team. And so I would say he raised many millions and millions of dollars and lost millions and millions of dollars on Luna when it collapsed. So if he's building there, that gets my attention, says, oh, maybe Cosmos is worth something, worth looking at. And Cardano is kind of Charles Hoskinson. There's that effect of you don't want to write them off. And so they're worth talking about.
Yeah, I keep betting on Charles, man, just because, out of pure
Yeah.
principle.
But I want to go touch on something Jackie said. If I only had $1,000, I would be. And touching on what George Tortorella says about new money, the gamble vertical of putting $100 into 10 altcoins that you did a lot of research on. Like I'm talking some of these, maybe they're 6 million market cap, maybe anything under 100 million market cap would probably be where would be my playground. And I'd be looking for things that I think could actually move further, that could give me the X's so that I could feel comfortable with $1,000 rolling that into Bitcoin. If we're talking, I'm adding $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, then there's at least a portion of that needs to go into Bitcoin. And that's the alternative. It's Bitcoin right now, you're not getting X's, and you're losing at that numbers game. Jared, we've had these dichotomy in these conversations. If you're sitting on a Bitcoin or like as a whole coiner, okay, like you've made your X's on Bitcoin don't matter. But when you're not sitting on a whole coin, and your X's matter a lot more, because like Bitcoin's 140K, probably at the top of this next bull market. 45K is your bottom of the next bear market. Somewhat $1,000 in Bitcoin at 45K, or even right now, gets you a 20th of a coin. Your purchasing power doesn't go nearly as far.
And just to back that up too, Lassie, like I think we're similar in our approach here too. I'm such an advocate for people learning about the technology right now, because this window is short and it will close at some point.
Yeah.
And so when you actually sit down and say, what does the graph do? What does Chainlink do? What do these do? Why would I put money in them? And why do I, and then, following something like Decentraland, why do I think this is going to pump or something like that? You're actually learning a lot about what you can then do in the picks and axes route, because you're learning about the infrastructure, the tech behind it. So you can make even more wiser. You can make more decisions later on that are even in and out of crypto, because crypto's it's still going to be one, digital assets are one asset class, but we're still going to have, traditional companies, stocks, bond, all of these things. So, diversification is always going to be your best friend in money matters.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, Jarrett. My play at $1,000 versus $100,000 are like way different. And if that's not, I know that's obvious to us because we talk about these things, but to the average Joe investor, like the rule, like it's like quantum physics works at a certain size, but not at another size. It's the same with investing. So at $1,000, I'll tell you what I do, and this is a hat tip right here towards Blockworks. I would buy my ticket and my plane ticket to the next permissionless today out of that $1,000, because the education and the networking to what Jackie is talking about, I think is far, like right now, I'll tell you, I bet you this is true, Jared. I might stack more Bitcoin if I understood the tech of Lightning, not just the sales pitch, but the tech. And therefore, the tech, what Jackie's talking about, these picks and axes. Okay. Michael Saylor's talking about this all the time. Jared's talking about this all the time. It's time for me to actually know. Is this just a Bitcoin version of a roll-up? Like, what are we talking about? Like, I want some layman's terms. I need to understand the jargon. And so for me, I would definitely invest at $1,000 into my knowledge. And then with the rest of the half, I would probably stack a bit more my stack, but tilted towards what Aussie's saying. I agree. I'd get rid of Matic. Maybe I'll do a separate video of literally me taking my current allocations and reallocating to my next allocations. Let's grab this quote here. You want to read that, Jarrett? You had that?
Yeah, sure. It's from George. He says, all relevant points, Aussie. But an individual's time horizon plays so much into strategy. I'm a fan of Vegas and gambling, but always trying to be realistic with expecting any return around an altcoin. And this is where...
Well, Jackie says, get out of town.
And George, you're totally right about time horizon. I want to retire in 5 to 10 years if I'm lucky, if I play my cards right.
Jesus.
I know, Grant. I know, Grant. I'm so young. I'm such an optimist. But time horizon,
Optimism.
Yeah,
I'm an
exactly.
OP.
Optimism. But yes, it's a Vegas. If you're looking for a secure play, if you're looking at a secure play, you're definitely going as a like my dad. I got my dad into crypto.
Yeah.
He's only allocating money to Bitcoin and ETH because his time horizon is much shorter. His risk appetite is much tighter. He does not have a big risk appetite.
I
But
do
when
agree.
I'm young and I think there's I know that there's a reason why I'm thinking it's only about 5% of my portfolio, between 2.5% and 5% of my portfolio that's going to be going to these small plays. And that's going to be spread across probably 10 to 20 projects. So I'm sticking $1,000 into 10, maybe 15, 10 different projects and hoping that maybe probably two of them do somewhere between a 10 to 1,000x. That's what I'm hoping. All I honestly need is one of them to do 1,000x, and it doesn't matter if the others totally fail.
So to add in a Bitcoin perspective here amongst the slog of let's buy altcoins till our eyes bleed. The reason why I'm really focused on Bitcoin is a couple reasons. One, I can safely store it. A lot of these other coins, I have to have 10 different hot wallets because each one needs a new wallet if I want to actually get it off an exchange or get it off a swap. So, and I really think ownership and owning your keys is really important. That's number one. And I've run into that. I have a trust wallet. I have all these different things because I can't put it all in my ledger, anyway. So that's one. I think being able to store something is really important. Number two is I think Bitcoin and potentially ETH are going to be the first things you're actually going to be able to borrow against or leverage in the real world to be able to actually do anything. And I think that that's really important. Number three, my time horizon is 2030. And I think by 2030, Bitcoin's at 1.2 million. And so if it's $26,000 today to try to stack altcoins, because then you're going to flip it into Bitcoin, which I rarely see done and I rarely see done well, because it's like an addicting thing at the casino where you're like, oh, I won 3 blackjacks in a row. Let me put it all on the fourth type thing. That's my second. And then my third is that if Lightning continues to be adopted, Bitcoin may be a thing that you want because when you're traveling, that may be what's accepted. And for me, I live globally and I want something that's accepted. I have been in crypto for 6.5 years now, and I've really never been able to use it, right? I haven't gone to El Salvador yet, which I will with, Wallet of Satoshi or any other Bitcoin Lightning wallet. But like having this wealth, if you can't borrow against it, I don't know. If you can't safely secure it, I don't really know. And if you can't transact it, I don't know. So if you have a massive bag of Cosmos and I'm, in the middle of like Africa, Latin America, or Asia, maybe nobody wants it, Yeah. So these are things totally that are really important to keep in mind. And also like I started with Bitcoin. Most people come into the space. That's the first thing they buy. And I think it's just the most
You're wrong.
simple.
Robinhood degens buy Dogecoin. You are wrong.
I'm not talking about Robinhood. I'm talking about the 2017 when I came in, and most people were buying
More
Bitcoin
people came in 2021 than in 2017, and they all bought Dogecoin first.
Your graduating class is different than mine, Aussie. My point being, I didn't come in with all these fancy fintech apps because they didn't have those back then and they weren't running crypto. We are, however, at the top of the hour. I do think everyone needs to figure out where they want to buy. The reality of it is anything you buy now, I think conservatively on average is going to 5 to 6x. I will say that very comfortably.
Not financial advice.
That actually is financial advice.
And I'm just gonna counter you with one last thing before we go top of the hour. You did meet someone who successfully rolled a bunch of their money from alts into he rolled it into ETH. He didn't go into Bitcoin, but he rolled into ETH. Jesse Eckel. He made 1.4 million
Titano
in the last bull run.
Same with Roger
Titano.
Williams. Roger Williams also talked about that on my podcast. He had, I forget what coin.
He made 1.46 million or something and rolled more than half of it sitting in ETH right now or stable coins because he rolled it over. A bunch of it's, I think some of it's sitting in Bitcoin. I don't know for sure. So let's let Jackie wrap us up here.
Well,
Jackie?
and I would just say, well, first, Jared's question said, what would you do as a specific person? So obviously my answer was like personal to me. I'm somebody that likes to learn. I don't, and I think this notion that crypto is gambling is just absolute nonsense. You can turn anything in this planet can be a gamble, can be an addiction, can be a vice if that's how you want to use it. I personally don't go around talking to people to implore them to do that. I implore them to learn. I also, the only reason I have Bitcoin, I bought a little bit in the beginning, and whatever, but most of it I've rolled, I've DCA'd into Bitcoin. So I've flipped many of my altcoins into Bitcoin or ETH. I did have another point, but I've honestly totally forgotten it.
That's all right. So I will piggyback on that and then do my shout out for the sake of time. I constantly, I have learned, having been in crypto since 2013, there's nothing different about this than any other investment. Therefore, the principle of, from an investment perspective, from a tech perspective, from a sociological perspective, there's all new context. But principally from an investment perspective, in my opinion, there's nothing different about this than every other tech. Therefore, the principle that I learned very early on is that nothing is in itself inherently risky. Risk is correlate to the knowledge of the risk taker. If I know inside knowledge about Lightning or ZK proof, and I have that insider knowledge, it has zero risk for me to gamble the farm. But if I don't know shit from shit, then, and I throw the farm at it, I am complete risk. So I do agree with George, but I also agree with Jackie in that if you don't know, it is risky. So when someone thinks of it as gambling, the first question is what do you really know about this particular asset?
And can I just add so quick? I'm sorry, the point came back to me. I've watched this in crypto, people banging the drum that, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin are going to save the world. The problem is people do not have financial literacy. That's where it starts. And I think that's what you develop when you learn about altcoins and projects and blockchain and all of this. And if you don't want to start there, then I'm someone you don't even want to talk to. Like, don't even have me on Not Crypto Bros again, because my drum is financial literacy.
Yeah, I agree that, like, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, he ground that into my head in the early 2000s. And if I don't know the jargon and the definition, it's old school vocab lessons. So my shout out today, if we could wrap up, is A, to Jackie for being here and bringing her salsa, her pimiento to the show. My shout out is to everyone who went to Permission List and thinks that they landed in God's country of Austin, and then are still like defragging, as Jackie said. But then those who are also staying focused on the core that matters, whatever that is, whether it's your business, whether it's crypto, whether it's not crypto, those who can still go through that and then come up and go, wait, I still have a vision and I still have a calling. So that's my shout out today. Aussie, what do you got?
I'm going to shout out the Rogue Radio team and gman.eth for connecting us with Golden and for honestly some of the awesome content that they put out. So thanks for being cool G's in Web3. So huge shout out to G-Man and the whole team at Rug Radio.
Jarrett, what do you got?
Yeah, I want to shout out Jackie's comment. I think financial literacy is at the base of most of society's problems. I have many friends that complain about being broke, but they have $200 to subscriptions, buy about $300 of booze and weed every month, and then tell me they can't put $5 in every month in a Bitcoin. So shout out financial literacy. I really do think that that's at the base. And that is why I think Bitcoin is where you should start, because then you get into questions of hard money, sound money, central banks,
I do agree
who actually owns this, and from a global perspective, what happens when the dollar machine goes burr. So
Jackie, any shout outs today with your first official shout out session?
Other than to Walter.
Walter. Yeah. I will shout out the Now Crypto Bros team. You guys push me in a different direction. You challenge me in different directions than I usually go or am in. So and I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's always a fun time.
And it's going to be many more fun times. Listen, folks, we took up a lot of your time. I actually think we managed 4 talking heads pretty well. Guys, check us out, notcryptobros.com. We'll be updating that soon. We're going to be like hitting some conferences over the next 12 to 18 months. Follow us there. But No matter what you do, check us out on LinkedIn, like, subscribe, share, and ask your questions. We're here for you guys. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday at 4. Take care.